Hey everyone, I've spent the last 2 days fiddling around with cameras and light poles and booms and all kinds of things trying to set up this studio here for a little bit better situation. And as it turns out, there's a lot of other equipment that I'm going to have to get. And I really just want to sew. So that's what I'm going to do today. In the meantime, I was going to let you know, first of all, I have to move this camera. It's in the wrong spot. Hang on a minute. There, that's better. Okay, so in the meantime, while I'm working on this project, I've acquired a few other projects. I have a tablecloth, which the fabric is just absolutely gorgeous for that. It's for Candice, this daughter. And then for my youngest daughter, I am going to start on this. We're making this Berta pattern, and we're going to be doing view A. 6340 is the pattern number, and the fabric for this is going to be a really light and airy white lace eyelet. And then I'm going to be making a pair of shorts for my sister out of this adorable Farmer's Work in Acres Not in Hours fabric. And I think it's a Riley Blake, and it is called Homestead Life. It's already been, it's 2 acres. It's 2 yards. It's already been washed and dried. So all I have to do is just cut it out and stitch it up. And I'm going to basically do the same thing with this that I did the last time I made her 2 pairs of shorts, and that is I'm just going to use this PJ pattern because that's kind of the style that she likes, just kind of a loose, and it's in Alabama and it's hot. We are in August of 2023 and it is just cooking, you guys. So that's a project. This is a project, but currently, right now, my main focus is this project. And I had to do a bit of cleaning up in here because I had done some painting, and I am shocked to discover today that I did not notice, but I actually got paint on George. So I'm going to have to clean that off as well. It's like right here and right here, yellow and kind of a blend of orange and red. So I need to clean that off. I wanted to remind everybody where we are. So I have the pin tucks on the front halves of the bodice. And here they are. And then on the back piece, I have the pin tucks as well. And next, we will be adding the insertion lace that was chosen. And I'm just messing around. I'm not sure if I remember where. Let's see where we're supposed to put it. I might need to check with Candice on this because it's been such a long time, and it might be that we decided to do pin tucks on the back instead of insertion lace. And if you don't like the point, or if you don't want to try to do the point, you can just literally have it go straight across, or you can round it off, however you want to do it. So I'll be right back. Now I like to press my lace, if it's cotton lace, which this is, with starch, like I've shown you in past videos, with a hot iron. And my method is to press it till it is dry once I've sprayed it with starch, and press, resisting the urge to twist the iron back and forth over the lace, because if you do, you'll end up with little crinkles in the lace that you might not be able to remove. And I can feel, this is where I stopped with the starch right here. So I'm just going to go ahead, trim that off. Put my measuring tape away. I'll just use the mat to measure with, or the pattern piece. I think I mentioned in my last video, the part 1 of this, that I like to use the duckbill scissors when I'm doing lace insertion. You can use just plain scissors, even bent shears if you want, as long as they're sharp and you know that you'll be able to get between the fabric and the lace without cutting either one. Okay, I also like to use glass head pins, or I think these are crystal, just something that won't melt under the iron. We'll start with one piece. And I think I'll give this a quick, whoops, I think I'll give this one a quick press as well, just to make sure it's nice and starchy. And if you are struggling with an iron that you don't trust, if you're afraid that it's going to do one of those things where it just spews out, you know, yucky water or whatever, you can always use a press cloth between your fabrics, your laces, and the iron. All right, so what I did is I put pins right at the points, and I'll just, if I actually manage to get through the fabric, oh, yeah, just lift up and mark where those pins are. And I have found that I can absolutely trust this Air Erase pen. It's Soline. Yeah, Soline. I bought it on Amazon, and it is absolutely working as it says, with the ink vanishing within 72 hours. Most of the time it's 48 hours. I'll line it up. These lines right here are for a wider lace. So let me bring you down so you can see what I'm talking about. So these right here are for a little bit wider lace, and then my marks are just on the inside of this lace. So my lace is just kind of in between all of that phase. Okay. And I'll take my glass pins or crystal pins. I want to make sure that I've got my lace facing the way I want it to be facing outward. This is what Candice and I agreed on, is the outside. So this is the reverse side as far as Candice and I have decided. So this is the reverse, and this is what should be showing on the outside. Now I want to read the directions on the pattern about how they want this to be shaped, the point. If they want it shaped, or if they want it just sewn in that direction and then the extra lace removed. Use ready-made. Okay. Alright, we are supposed to place the lace over the marked insertion area on the right side of the fabric, lining it up so that stitching line of insert point falls at the best place in the lace design. Lace should extend slightly beyond the neckline edge. Okay, so I need to make sure I cut just a little extra up there at the top. We didn't make our own lace, so I don't need to worry about this information. So here we are looking at this. And at the bottom of insertion area, cut ready-made lace to pointed shape. Okay, so we are supposed to just cut it and then do the stitching, and then we don't have to worry about cutting extra lace away. It's not lace shaping, it's simply just adding a piece of cut lace. Okay, so I will need the pattern to cut that lace properly. Now, I think the best way for me to accomplish this is to trace it. Okay. So I basically folded this in half, marked where the point was and where the point over here ends up on this side, and then just drew a line on my lace and cut it so that I have that point. And I need just a little bit of lace to go beyond the point that I drew on the fabric. And I need to make sure everything is straight. Lace can get kind of wobbly on you. Okay. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to pin it. So as you can see, I fiddled around with the pinning a little bit. I decided to put this pin horizontal rather than vertically up the middle there. It just seemed a little dangerous. All right, so now comes the fun part. So I have white Gutermann thread in my sewing machine, and I am using just a regular normal sized Schmetz Microtex needle. I'm using my 0 foot. I'm going to be just leaving my machine the way it is with this little platform back here, this guy. Instead of taking this off, I'm going to leave it on. I need to set my machine for a very tiny, tiny zigzag. I prefer to do it from a straight stitch. Right here, this is for my stitch width. This is for stitch length. So I need to test with a piece of the same fabric that I'm using for the garment. I need to have little scrap pieces like this to check my stitches and make sure they are the way I want them. So I think I'll put the width down to about 1.5 and the length about 1, just to test it and see what that looks like. This part right here is what I will be using. I want to be sure that I'm on the lace, not on the fabric when I make this turn right here. So I'm in needle down with my needle in the lace. I'm going to lift my presser foot and turn the project and continue stitching. And again, in the lace, not the fabric. And turn. So this is what it looks like on the back, and this is what it looks like on the front. And you can just leave your fabric alone without cutting it, unless, you know, that's not the look you want to go for. So the next thing I'm going to do is, because I have all these little zigzags on the back, I am going to use these little zigzags and I'm going to do it again, but from this side. It takes a lot of thread and a lot of time, but it's my preferred way of doing this. So I'm going to follow this line and just redo what I just did. Okay, now I'm going to go press this real quick. I'll be right back. Can you imagine how horrified I was when I realized that I had pressed over that air erase ink? Oh, I'm so glad it came out. I had to use water, but as soon as I hit it with the iron, I just about screamed. But you know, these things happen, and it did completely disappear, so I'm happy about that. It's just this is still a little wet. But I'm going to go ahead and we're going to trim out behind the lace. Okay, so the way that I do that is I take just a regular pair of shears and I lift up the fabric, make sure that I'm only going to be cutting the fabric right down the middle. And then I take my duckbill scissors. Now I'm going to be trimming along this edge right here. I'm going to press the cut edge of the fabric to the outside like so, and I will stitch that down one more time. And I do have to do that from the back because I want to be able to push this bit of fabric out of the way and toward the fabric, not toward the lace. So there's the first piece of insertion. It's quite wrinkly at the moment. Let me go press it really quick. All of the pieces of lace for the bodice in this particular case have been stitched in, and the fabric behind has been cut out. So the next step, and I do want to see about marking these gathering lines. I believe that's next. We could go ahead and stitch these side seams, pieces A and B, or I can look at this and mark where these gathering lines go. Although I think it might be easier if they were attached, because I will know if that line is going to meet up and match. So that is what I'm going to do. Let me find the back, which this is it right here. Okay. Now you need to decide if you want to do French seams, which you will stitch. If you're doing French seams, you will stitch them wrong sides together. We need to match up these notches. And we would stitch right along here and then turn it right sides together and stitch it again, making sure that we don't have any raw edges protruding. But I'm not going to do French seams. I'm going to do the traditional right sides together, and then what am I doing? Okay. I apologize for the racket. I don't know what's going on outside. I can't imagine that there's something that needs to be that noisy, and it has been going on for hours. So I wish I could erase that from my track, but I've tried before and it doesn't really work. I hope it's not too distracting. But anyway, what I'm going to do is right sides together, matching up these notches on the side, and I will be pinning It does state, ouch, in the pattern instructions, I just got stabbed by a pin, that French seams are recommended for the camisole, but I want to do a different type. I want to stitch them because they have 1/2 inch seam allowances. I'm going to do my seam, and then I'm going to fold under the raw edges, press them down, and then hand stitch those down on each side. I'm going to take my air erase pen and mark an approximate 1/2 inch. If I could find my tape measure, which I swear, oh, here it is. Okay. So as you can see, there's a good amount of fabric between the seam right here and the raw edge of the fabric. But my plan is to, once this air erase ink has disappeared, I will take this to the iron. I want to iron this flat first, just to set this seam. It needs to be just pressed flat, just like it is. Once I get that done, I can then go back and I can press it open like this. And then I can press under this raw edge and hand stitch this down. Both sides would be just prettily encased in a nice little seam all the way down. I don't want to do it by machine because I don't want that stitch to show too much on this side. Although you could do it by machine. You would just have a row of stitches here and a row of stitches here. And I will have a row of stitches on both sides, but they will be hand stitched, not machine stitched. And I will do the same thing on, I saw this and I thought, oh my goodness, what has happened to this back piece of fabric that I had? Okay, oh, wow, I must be tired. Okay, so here's the back, here's this front. Now I need to attach this side, right sides together with this side, matching those notches. And I am pinning because I want to be pretty darned accurate. Not that I wouldn't be on any sewing project, but sometimes these lighter weight fabrics will just slip and slide under that sewing machine needle. You do not need to lock your stitches when you get down to the very bottom. This will be hemmed, so there's no need to stitch and then back up and lock those stitches. But now I need to wait probably tomorrow I will come back and this ink will be gone. That looks good. Okay, so I'll meet you back here tomorrow. Okay guys, I'm back. It is the next day, and as you can see, the ink is all gone from the side seams and on the front where the lace was attached. Now you might see some blue and you're thinking, what? Remember, that's the filled pin tucks right there. So that is the pearl cotton, and on this side it's just kind of a shadowy effect. But today I am going to press open the side seam. First I'm going to press it flat, and after I've done that, this will help set this seam. So that'll happen, and then let me trim these little whiskers away. There's a lot of little trimming and fiddly things that you do. It's kind of just part of the process. You have to trim out the little, the little hairs of fabric, the threads. It is, for me, I just recognize that I'm going to be doing this, and I'm not mad about it. I enjoy doing it. It's just a quick hand sewing project, and I will have fun. Well, it's been a minute since I was working on the Folkwear number 203 Edwardian Underthings Camisole, but I am back, and today that's what we're going to start working on again. Back to the project at hand. Let's see. We've done the lace insertion, which you should be able to see that right there on both sides of the front. And Candice was actually here yesterday. She stopped by and I sort of tried this on her, just held it up, put it on her, and everything fits great. We are just right on. So here's our lace insertion. We've done everything else. We've done the side seams, and I stitched the seam allowances down by hand. This is the inside and this is the outside. It does tell you to do French seams, and I just decided I didn't want to do a French seam. I need to get my two front pieces A, because I'm going to have to mark where the waistline is. And on this pattern there are two. There is, on the center front, there's one a little above the other one. The authentic full fronted effect, which if you look at the picture you can see is what I think they've used, where it's kind of blousy in the front. That's more authentic toward an Edwardian Underthings look. A more contemporary look has you put the markings higher. So the lower the mark, the more blousy the front is, the more authentic to that time frame, and the higher, the more contemporary. So I feel like that's what I'm going to do for Candice, only because if she ever does decide to wear this underneath something, the something would be a more contemporary piece of clothing. Right up here it says modern waistline, and you can see this is where you will go with your gathering lines and your casing. Down here it says traditional waistline, and it starts and ends a little bit lower right here. So since I'm going to be using this one, I'm going to highlight it. And this right here, there's a little line right here, and that line is the buttonhole that you're going to make that allows the ribbon, if you're using it, or in my case, the twill tape, to emerge as the drawstring. Okay, so now I want to see. Correct. And you can shape this by just kind of putting it on your ironing board using some glass head pins and steaming it in the shape that you need this to go. But I think by the time I get it stitched, there's not a whole lot of shaping that needs to be done. There's just a little bit of a little bump right here that I'm pretty sure I can just, oh, this is upside down, okay, stitch into place. And then of course this is all one piece, so across the back and back around to the front. So you have to be pretty careful about where you put your markings. Okay, so here is piece B, the back, and all we need to do for this piece is, of course, line it up with the seam allowances. We know for a fact that this is only half of the pattern. We'll have to flip it over and do the other side. But the main goal for me here is to just line it up with where I had the marks on the front piece and take this air erase pen and then just kind of mark where it is supposed to go. Now there will be the upper and the lower, and I'm just looking for this upper line, and my mark is right here, so this is where my upper line would be, and then I have the gathering right in here. So I'm just gonna, it seems to be, this ink just goes right through the paper. I can just do these dots for the gathering, and then I'm gonna flip it over and line it up with these two marks that I've got right here. I'll make them a little darker. There and there, and then see how that looks good. Okay, yeah, mark that. Did I? Yeah, I did. Okay, we are all set exactly where we're supposed to be. So really all I have to do is mark the gathering bits. Okay, my casing, I want to make sure I have that. I think I'm going to use something with a straight edge, maybe a pattern piece, because the nice thing about it is I wrote something on a piece of paper with this, forgetting that it was going to erase. I came back in here a little while later and it was gone, and I about pulled my hair out looking for the piece of paper that I had written on. And then I realized, oh, yeah, that's what happens. Okay. So the next little bit of planning here is to take this. Now I may have not cut it long enough. I'm not really sure. I just kind of pretended like I knew what I was doing, and it actually tells me on the pattern. Yeah, let's just see if they were right. Ooh, almost exactly. But when I do this, somebody just got here, so I'm gonna have to stop. When I do this, I will set my sewing machine to 5 stitch length, and I'm gonna leave the width alone. I just want my stitch length to be as extended as possible to easily pull these threads to gather it up. So the next time I can get to the sewing room, we will continue. So we need to talk about these gathering dots where we're marking. So I've already marked the front, and I'll show you that on the pattern, but then on the back we need to do that as well. And don't forget, you have a seam allowance that you have to allow for when you line this up on the back. The best way to do it is to look at where the neckline is and the shoulder strap area and just line that up. My pattern is folded under. Okay, so just get that lined up where it's supposed to be, and then look down where these dots are down. Oop. I need to make some room. And this, of course, is assuming that, like me, you're using air erase, and long after you've cut and measured and sewn and stitched and all of that, this will be gone. So you're going to have to remark it, unless you put in some tailor's stitches by just, you know, making a big X or something with thread, and then you'll know, oh, that's where it was. So look down here and you'll see these dots, and of course they're in reverse because this piece is upside down on this side. So you're going to look for, we got the extra small, small, medium, and that's the size I'm making. So I'm just going to mark where that medium dot is right there, and then flip the pattern piece over so that everything matches up. On the other side, you got that neckline matching, and the shoulder and the arm side right there. Get that all taken care of. And do the exact same thing. We have extra, you can't see. All right, everything's all perfectly lined up. So we have extra small, small, medium. We need to mark that dot right there. Okay, so, and then on the front pattern piece, basically the same thing except in kind of a swept up motion. There's a dot here, and then there's a dot over here. If you're doing the higher casing, then you would use the dot that's up here. If you're doing the traditional lower casing, then the dot would be down here. To gather this, make sure you have a couple, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 straight pins, because you're going to need those. And then we're going to set our sewing machine stitch length as far as we can get it. I'm going to just go ahead and use 5. Alright, so the clock is ticking on this air erase ink, and I'm just going to go ahead and start. And I'm going to actually stitch from the right side of the fabric because I want to see the needle stitches. I don't want to see the bobbin stitches. So I'm going to set that down right on that dot. I need to put this in needle down as well. And for gathering stitches, remember, you will not be locking. These are actually going to be removed. I'm going to suggest that we pull a little bit more thread than we would normally pull from the machine when we're stitching. And what we will be doing is take a thin pin. It doesn't necessarily have to be a glass head pin because you won't be pressing these, but move your threads out of the way, and then just stick the pin in a few times. These glass head pins are super long, or they're actually crystal head pins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thread, this needle thread, and do a figure 8 from the top of the pin down to the bottom of the pin till I've used up all that thread. Just like that. And then I can take the top thread and gently gather up. It's supposed to be 2.5 inches. So I will take my measuring tape . It might take a minute to kind of evenly distribute your gathers. You don't want too many at the beginning and then nothing at the end, so to speak. Everything should be pretty much the same. Look for your 2.5 from this point here. I think I'll move the camera down a little bit. Okay, so we're going to measure, say we'll put the 2.5 mark on this pin, and then over here is where the thread has ended up. So I know I need to gather it up to here. So I'll just kind of scooch it up a little and see what I've got. Get to 2.5 on the pin there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, I know that that needs to be distributed a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is pop my pin in here, just like I did with this one, right where that dot is. And I know if I can get the pin more than once, if I can weave it in more than once, that's a pretty good way of holding it. And then I'm going to do the figure 8 around and around and around and around. And the more thread you have, the better success you will have at keeping it from coming out. Now see, I can kind of pull on it a little bit and it'll stay where I need it to stay. And you can't get too rough with this project once you start this, or you'll be doing it over and over again. So when I do the next little bit, if I pull this, if I pull this too hard, it will all come out and I'll have to start all over again with the measuring part. So I'm going to carefully just put this over here, not do a whole lot of rough stuff with it. And I'll go ahead and do the center back, and that one is a 3-inch gather, so we'll be pulling it up to 3 inches. Okay, so we have all of that done. Now we need to flip this over. And we're going to be taking this single fold bias tape, which, to be completely transparent, mine is double fold. I bought 55 yards of double fold and I've just pressed it open. I didn't want to buy a small package of single fold and then have to join it together with another small package of single fold. And I'm always using bias trim. So it occurred to me to just buy it in a huge quantity so that I could just press it open and use it as a single fold. Now I do have a slight ridge where you can see where I've pressed it open, but it's so barely there. Let me turn this light on. I don't even think it's showing up on the camera. There it is, a little bit right there. But if you choose to do something similar and you cannot abide that crease, my recommendation is to go ahead and purchase it. It's already cut bias. Just cut the amount you need and soak it overnight in cool water with a little bit of white vinegar. And the next morning, you're going to have to repress the single fold part, this right here. You will have to repress it, but it's already cut bias, so that would work if that's what you would prefer to do. Now, the instructions tell us to fold under a 1/2 inch, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that. Oh, I'm supposed to make buttonholes. Never mind. We're going to make these buttonholes and then we start with the casing. All right, so I need to change my foot. So on George, this Bernina, I'm going to use foot number 3, which is my buttonhole foot. That's not the huge buttonhole foot. I don't need to use that one for this application. So I'm just going to remove the 0 foot and pop on foot number 3. And if you've not used this feature on your sewing machine, it is just simply a buttonhole. So you have to mark the size on the piece that you're going to be making the buttonhole on. You can't, there's nothing that you set on this foot. Okay, and then you see this little button right here. You push that and it moves down. It tells you to use foot number 3 right here. Let's see if I can get it down there where you can see. So this is the foot indicator right here, and it pops down to foot number 3. And if these lights are blinking, I apologize. They do not blink in real life. They're just solid on when you're using the sewing machine, but there is a variance between the speed on cameras, and occasionally it can cause this type of thing to look like it's just blinking crazy, but it's not in real life. So anyway, foot number 3, I have my machine and needle down, and then this is the buttonhole feature right here. And it starts you over here on this left-hand side, and as you progress through the buttonhole, you push this dial, and now it's switched to the bottom, and then it will automatically move up to the right side, and then you push it again, and it will finish the buttonhole. It will make this, it's a back and forth motion, and then it will come down the left side, 1, 2, 3 as a straight stitch, and you're done, unless you choose to do another round if you want thicker thread. So you start out over here on the left, you work your way here, and then here, and then here, and then the machine will just stop after the 1, 2, 3. It will just quit doing anything unless you restart the whole process again. So it's like you and the machine are kind of working together. It's a manual feature, but the machine has a little bit more control. Okay, so I need to find these 2 spots. I have them marked, and remember, it's clear on this. It tells you to do horizontal buttonholes. This, if you're wearing this little garment, this little camisole, this right here is the horizontal buttonhole. I originally marked vertical because weirdly on the pattern, the actual pattern piece, it has a vertical line right there. But if you look at this closer, you can see where they've actually tried to include another line. It's the strangest thing. It's not intuitive. I honestly didn't see it until late yesterday. but it's like a little bit, let me get it where it's going to focus. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but this is the end of the buttonhole, and right there, just this barely there line is the buttonhole. I'm going to try to pick up where I left off. That was crazy. I had an interruption. Okay, I can talk. So that's what I'm doing now, is the buttonholes. Now I recommend when you do buttonholes on really lightweight fabric that you either starch the heck out of it, get it good and starchy, or that you use some stabilizer on the back side. Now keep in mind that these buttonholes will be underneath the casing, this binding, this bias trim. It states that very clearly in the directions. When you look at the next page, it tells you to do this, pin the single fold bias tape to the wrong side of the camisole, and then down here at the bottom it says, in parentheses, buttonholes will be covered by the tape. I know that I have some wash away stabilizer in here somewhere, but I'm not going to spend all day looking for it. I'm just going to cut some of this lightweight, or I think it's medium weight, press on, iron on stabilizer, and I am going to I just need a little bit, and I'm going to put it behind the buttonhole. Okay, now I am using 1/4 inch wide twill tape for these two buttons, and I'm not going to press it down. I'm just going to put it back here behind where this buttonhole is going to go, and make sure it's staying. You could press it if you wanted to. All right, and remember I changed the foot. I want to go needle down and make sure everything is out from underneath, and here we go. Okay, and that finishes that buttonhole. And earlier I think I said once you get it to the bar across the bottom, the bar tack across the bottom, then you push the button to go back up on the right side. I forgot, this machine does you push it to go to the bottom, this little bit right here, and it does this, and then it automatically goes up on the right. You don't have to push it again to get that to go up that way. Okay, now I need to remember to take the buttonhole foot off and set my machine back to a regular normal stitch. But I'm not going to do either one of those things until I get ready to sew, because if I take it out of buttonhole stitch and put it back in straight stitch and I forget to change my foot, then that's a mess. And if I change my foot and I forget to change this back to straight stitch, then that's a mess. So I'm just going to do everything all at once instead. So I'm going to turn this to the wrong side as the pattern suggests, and with these folded in sides facing the wrong side of the camisole, we're going to pin it down. And we need to make sure that we've got a half inch folded down on the end, like so. And we want to line that up right at the edge of the front placket right there and pin it down. Like that. Now I recommend that you just pull your gathers top to bottom, like I'm doing right here. I've got one hand down here, one hand up here, and I'm just pulling them straight, like so. And again, pull your gathers straight. And this right here, if you enjoy hand stitching, this would be a good place to just go ahead and enjoy hand stitching this. You are supposed to be stitching it along the top edge and the bottom edge to create the casing. Make sure that you're following. My lines are very faint. They've almost completely disappeared because it's air erase ink. But you saw me making those marks. It's almost headache inducing trying to see them, but there we go. That looks good. Okay. All right, me being me, I am not going to stitch this by hand. I am going to go ahead and stitch it by machine. I'm going to put my machine in the needle down, or the straight stitch needle down, and switch this back to my, I think I'm going to use the one foot. There's not a whole lot of difference in a 0 and a 1. I don't even think it's anything that you can see, except there is one little difference that I'm aware of. Let me zoom you down. So on the 0 foot, this one right here, where the thread goes to the back of the sewing machine is from the front of the foot right there. It's kind of hard to see. Let's put it on something that might show it up a little bit better. So it's not this line right here, it's the one right beside it right there. That's where the thread travels to the back. On the 1 foot, this one right here, this is completely closed and the thread travels to the back via this little spot right here on the foot. I don't know if that's there. I think you can see it right there. Right there. And sometimes when I'm sewing, I prefer that. I hope that if you are making this along with me, that I'm making sense and you're able to follow along. But if there are questions and you're not clear about something, do drop a comment down below this video. Ask me your question and I will try to get to it before I start working on the petticoat. Today is Monday. It is August the 21st of 2023. And I don't know if that's helpful information or not, but sometimes it helps me when I'm putting things together, videos together, if I just remind myself what day it is and that sort of thing. It can be helpful. All right, so I'm going to turn on my sewing machine, George. Make sure we're in a straight stitch. I have the right needle in, needle down. I'm going to set my stitches at 2.5. I'm going to leave the automatic width finder alone. Everything looks good. I am going to open the little door and check to see if I see anything I don't like, which I don't. So that's good. And our instructions for stitching this casing on are on this page. It says page 3 right here on the instructions sheets. So here we are going to stitch down across this edge right here, right there, and then all the way across, all the way down across to the other end. When we're done doing that, we have to remove the gathering threads. So we're going to thread either the ribbon, or in my case, twill tape will go in this buttonhole and then emerge on the other side. So I will be completely stitching the casing down all the way around. So I'm just going to get after that. Now keep in mind, I'm doing this on a sewing machine, and these stitches will show on the right side of this camisole. It will be gathered up though, so I'm not going to be too upset about that. If you don't want it to show, you're going to have to do all of that by hand, which it's not horrible. Okay, so once you have done all of the stitching all the way around the casing, you need to pull out the stitches that are holding those gathers. Just pull those out. So you'll have both sides, and you will have the back. And those threads should just come right out, unless you stitched over them, and then you might have to pick a stitch to get that to come out. And it's not that you've done something wrong, because it can be a little tricky to stitch something like this without, like I think I've stitched over it right here. I'm just going to see if I can tease it out. I'm not sure that's going to happen, so I'm going to come over here to the front side. No, there's going to be some work getting this one out. That's okay. You can use small scissors if you're sure you're not going to cut your fabric, or you can use a seam ripper. Thread the ribbon, or in my case, twill tape, onto either your bodkin or a safety pin that will fit through the casing. And emerge at the next buttonhole over on the other side. So there we go. Now the next step in the construction is to try this on. I think I need to pull this one through a little bit more. It's about, goodness, I don't know, 5-6 yards of this. So the next step is to try it on and then decide where the shoulder seams should go. The front is supposed to be, let's see, it tells, it's kind of specific about that. So you try it on and the waistline gathers should be concentrated in the front with the back quite flat, and the shoulder seam should be centered on top of the shoulder. And you're also supposed to be checking for this armhole fit. So if it's too large, you can adjust by shortening the shoulder strap of the front only. Stitch the shoulder seams and press them open. And then we're going to finish the neckline and the armhole edges by turning under 1/8 of an inch and then turn under another 1/8 of an inch and stitch. So it'll be turned under twice, right here and around the armhole. And then we're going to turn under the bottom edge, and it's within 1/4 of an inch, and then another 1/4 of an inch, and stitch for the hem. And then we'll be putting our buttonholes on and the trim that goes around the neckline and the arm. And then we're through. So I will see Candice most likely on Friday of this week. As I said earlier, today is Monday. There is a heavy cover of smoke from wildfires right now, and it's kind of awful getting outside. So I don't know that she will be coming over anytime this week before Friday. And in that case, I won't be working on this unless she does. I cannot really place the buttonholes until I know where the shoulder seams are going to go. I did want to say in this video a couple of things. Number one, I'm enjoying the heck out of this. I hope that if you are making this along with me, that I'm making sense and you're able to follow along. But if there are questions and you're not clear about something, do drop a comment down below this video. Ask me your question and I will try to get to it before I start working on the petticoat. I won't lie, I'm back from yesterday and I kind of don't know where I left off. So I'm just gonna start right here, right now. So Candice came over and I got measurements for where to stitch the shoulders, which interestingly, I guess our bodies are just not perfect. And so one shoulder seam is a little different from the other shoulder seam, which I think is normal in tailored clothes making. I can talk today. Clothes making. And also this arm side needs to be a little deeper, and I'm actually going to do that on both. Now, you'll notice all this is pinned. The reason for that is I marked it with the Air Erase ink yesterday, and as you can see, it is all gone. So I'm going to I put the pins in right where the line was yesterday, and I'm going to use that. I'll remark it with the ink, and then I'm going to cut this one, hold it up next to the other side, and I'll use this as a guide because we figured out they're both the same, which is kind of interesting. So then we're going to stitch the shoulder seams together where they're marked, and then once we've done that, the next step is, I think, let's see, we've done that, so we'll do that, and then we need to just finish all of the raw edges. So the neck edge will be finished, the hem will be finished. And the way we decided to do that hem is I am just going to do a roll and whip edge right along this edge, and then I will turn it under just the littlest little amount, because it doesn't need to be a deep hem. If you want yours to be a deep hem, I suggest that you measure the pattern, because it is a bit short. So if I hem it, it'll be fine. And I could even put lace across this bottom edge if I wanted to for a little added length. But if I were making it for anybody taller, I would measure from here to here and from the shoulder to here, and just try to get, you know, maybe add another inch or 2 if you wanted to make a really deep hem. I just don't feel like this as a lingerie item needs to be hemmed with a super deep hem, you know, like you would with, say, a pair of pants or a skirt or something. So that's how I'm going to hem it. And then around the neck and the arms, this needs to be trimmed even. This is the neck edge. And I'm going to do a roll and whip finish on the neck edge. And then I will do, let's see if I can find the end of it. This needs to be pressed. This is a cotton crocheted lace. And we chose this cotton crocheted lace because it isn't stiff, and it won't tickle or itch or just in any way have any interference with the skin that it contacts, because this particular version will have lace around the arm and around the neck, just like this picture right here. And this could all be irritating if it was that same ruffly lace that we're all familiar with. I don't have a piece of it laying here, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So we didn't want to do that. So we're going to roll and whip this edge, and then this will just be attached because it has a almost entre-deux edge right here where the needle can go in and just attach it to the fabric. Sorry about Bama. Somebody must be walking. Oh yes. Somebody's walking a dog, a Basenji. I don't know if you know anything about Basenjis, but most of them do not bark. They have kind of a quiet, I don't know if it's an inability, I don't know what it is, but they don't make a lot of noise. So when this dog happens to go by, he just kind of looks at Bama like, well, okay then, see ya. Bama. Bama's got a very loud bark. But when he barks, he's wagging his tail at the same time. So even though he sounds like he's very fierce, he's not very fierce. He's kind of a goof. Okay, so I need to go grab my air erase pen and get this remarked, and I'll be right back. All right, I need to move some things. I was showing Candice my plans for this ghost print. I bought this, I think I mentioned it the other day. I took it out of the frame and I drew little vines. I'm going to put some leaves in here, and then I've got a pumpkin kind of sketched in down here, and I'm going to do some more painting. She also volunteered, by the way, that if you guys wanted to see this on once it's all finished, she would be happy to model it. I asked her while she was here yesterday for this fitting if she wanted the petticoat to have an elastic waist as opposed to a drawstring waist, and she pointed out that the elastic is, for one thing, it will wear out. It does have a lifespan, and it would be awful to have to take it out and put something else in. And also, once you put the elastic in, that is the size. You can't change the size. So if there's a day or a time when it needs to be pulled tighter, then she can do that with a drawstring, and vice versa. If you needed to have it made larger, there's a drawstring. So I agree with her. I think we're going to stick with the drawstring. All right, so now if you want this, like me, if you don't have a mannequin, you can use your ham. I'll get it just to show you what I mean. This is a ham, and you can put this shoulder part right there, and see, it kind of helps shape that so you get a little bit more accurate measurement. So I am going to mark just like I did yesterday. Okay. I would say if you're looking for the items, the notions that you would need to have a good sewing room setup, a ham is a good one to have. I would include that. Okay, and again, I'm just going to stitch these right sides together, just like I did with this side seam. I'm so glad I thought to do this yesterday, to put these pins in, because I mean, I knew that the ink would be gone by the time I got back to the project, but as it turns out, Candice and Rob are going to stop by this afternoon. Anyway, and I'm just going to clothesline stitch. I don't have to cut the threads and take it out and all that business. Okay. I'm not locking my stitches because I am going to be applying lace after I do the after I finish these seam allowances here. I think there's just a little bit too much fabric though. So if I press it open and then press this and then press it, I just don't think I need quite that much. So I am going to trim this down, and I am going to use pinking shears. So I'm going to take this over to the ironing board, press these seams open, and then press this down to the seam, and then down like so, at which point I will hand stitch this down just like, as I've said, I did the side seams. That might seem bulky, but it is, for me, Candice loves it. And the nice thing about it is these stitches are easy to remove. If it ever needs to be let out or taken in or something repaired or even completely replaced, there's so much easier to take this out than it is to take out either sewing machine or serger or even a French seam. This just, you just undo these with your seam ripper, take the seam out, and then you can fix, repair, change, whatever you need to do. Okay, I'm gonna go press and I'll be right back. I am ready to sew up these shoulder seams. They've been pressed. I am going to go with, I'm not really sure how this is pronounced. Bohnin? Somehow that doesn't sound very French, but they are French sewing needles, and they are sharps, and they have big eyes. And for people who need glasses like I do, big eye hand sewing needles are like, what's the word I'm looking for? The best. I don't know if you can see. It looks like they're just huge, but I'm not going to be using the needles in the center. Those are not for this type of stitching. I'm going to be using a needle on the end. Let's see if that one's kind of visible. Yeah. But they're super sharp and super thin, which is what I like about them for this type of fabric. So let me put my glasses on. My glasses are readers and they are 0.50 because I had ordered some 1.0 and I thought they were too strong, but I'm almost thinking that maybe the 1.0s weren't strong enough because the 0.50 is not what I need either. So I might have to go back and order some, maybe 1.25 and give that a go. I don't know. It's terrible. Okay. I was nearsighted my whole entire life, so I'm having a hard time adjusting to this needing longer arms deal. Okay, and one of the things that you might struggle with these needle, the eye of the needle is just slightly larger than the circumference of the actual needle, and sometimes it's hard to thread those because your thread is a little bit thicker. So what I'm going to do is the way I always do it, which is fold my thread over and then pinch it and then pull it off of the eye, and then the folded part of the thread, which I don't think you can see, maybe you can, just sometimes will go right into that little eye. And if not, you can always use one of those needle threaders. So I have stitched down the seam allowance on both shoulder seams right across the top there, and we're going to now do our roll and whip stitching all the way from the front of one side around the neck, all the way over the shoulder, across the back, all the way across the other shoulder, and down all the way down to the other front. I am going to saturate the neck edge with starch and let it soak until it's dry. And then I will press it. I'm cutting off some loose threads here. But I want it very heavily starched for the roll and whip process. Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to be using my beloved Faultless Spray starch. No affiliation, just what I like to buy, what I like to use. I have used, mix your own peels, which I still have a bottle of it, but I think it's gummy and I would have to mix up a new batch. So I'm just going to use my tried and true Faultless and let this soak. It has to dry, so it'll be a while before I come back, but that's okay because right now it's time for my phone call with my sister. So I'll see you when that's done. This sat overnight. It's the next day, and I have set George back up, since I did turn the machine off last night, to 1 length and a tick over 2 on the width. I did another test piece of fabric somewhere here. I don't know what I did with it. And I kind of like the little 1 tick past 2 on this width for this roll and whip that we're going to do. And if you're not familiar with the term roll and whip, it's where the fabric is rolled and the thread is just kind of whipped in a zigzag motion over that raw edge. I've completed the roll and whip around the front neck edge. I've just kind of been trimming some of these little whiskers off. And I'm pretty much done. So next I will starch and press the lace that is going to go all the way around that neck edge. And that will also be with a zigzag stitch. Now my plan with these raw edges is I'm going to just kind of give them a little snip with my pinking shears, like so. That won't stop lace from raveling or unraveling, but it gives me a little peace of mind. And then I'm going to fold it under like so, and it's really, I mean, I saturated it with the starch. And then I'm going to just take these 2 edges, this right here, the fabric, and this right here, the lace, and I'm going to attach, I'm going to use foot number 5. Foot number 5, where did you go? There you are. Okay, and it is basically like the foot 10, except remember, this is longer. It's got that little squiggly bump in the guide, and it allows the needle to go fabric to lace with a zigzag stitch. And for this one, I need to get that down there like so. I am going to put it in zigzag, and I'm going to let it default to what it wants to default to. I'm going to stitch this down with a zigzag stitch, just a little one. Okay. And just trim some of the excess. There we go. Now I can just kind of hold the 2 right next to each other, one over on this side of that guide and the other over on this side of that guide, and they just kind of meet up. Okay, so here it is attached to the front neck edge all the way around. which I think is lovely. And now I need to do the arm area. That will involve roll and whip around both, and then the same type of application for the lace around the arm. So we'll be doing that. And then the hem, and I believe what we'll be doing on the hem is the roll and whip, and then just a very scant turn under. So I basically I don't even have to do a roll and whip. I just want to do a really close zigzag and then fold this under and then just barely hem the bottom edge. And the last thing is buttons and buttonholes. I'm going to cut these threads. Okay, so you can see we are truly about done. It's just a matter of stitching and finishing, and it will be complete. I think it's turning out really pretty. And if you remember, the buttons are blue glass buttons that I bought on Etsy. So there's supposed to be 4 and I have 5. I might have 6 actually. So she'll have some extra buttons if she needs them. Both of the armholes have been completed. The neckline has been completed. So the next step is to hem it, which I have yet to do. I'm going to trim off all of these little whiskers. I think you can see them. They need to be trimmed off. And I'm going to use my tiny rotary cutter to do it. I have to make sure I have everything out of the way. It's just this is so much more precise and easy to do. Remember, I call this mouse because it squeaks. Sometimes when I am working, I get like people coming in and people leaving and dogs barking, etc. And right now I have a little bit of a quiet lull, but I'm sure you can tell the lighting has changed because it is 7:30 p.m. I'm going to try to do something about the light. I'm going to have to leave the camera on so I can see. So it has been hemmed. I'm so sorry about this light. I think if I turn this off, it'll be awful. I don't know. That's pretty bad. The armholes have been trimmed in lace. The neck edge has been trimmed in lace. And all that is left, all that remains, are the buttonholes and the buttons. So I will once again pull out that pattern piece. Okay, so we want the front piece, and we need the this side where the buttonhole lines are. This part I will fold under because it's the part we've already sewn, and then just line this up with just the fabric, not the lace. And I'm going to drop it down just a wee bit because that would be where the hem at the seam would be at the top. Okay. And buttonholes would be on this side. So if I turn it around and put it on, the buttonholes would be on the right, the buttons are on the left. And we put on the manual buttonhole foot, which is foot number 3. Hope that shows up. And there we go. And we put our sewing machine in the buttonhole position. And I don't change anything else. All right. And it's the width of the button, not this size, but the actual width that's causing the issue. Something I had not considered. So I will go order some new buttons. Hey everyone, it's Laurie. I'm in the final part of the Folkwear number 203 Edwardian Underthings video, the camisole part. All I have left to do is sew on the buttons. And I know this is already open because I have exciting news. Why does that relate to this? Well, it just does. So my husband and I have an offer in on a 5-acre farm. We're going to call it 3 Cedars. And my daughter Candice and I, the daughter I am making this for, had a day together today. We went to that general location, which is about 20 minutes from where I am now. And we had lunch, and then we drove out and looked at the house, which you really can't see the house from the street, but there's really not a street because it's just a little side road. It's way, way out in the country. And we were talking about all the fun stuff, like I plan to have chickens, and of course we'll have a garden and all kinds of fun stuff. And on the way back, we stopped at the mailbox here for the Mukilteo house residence. And because this is for her, and I knew that these were the buttons, I let her open the package. And we were still in the car. So it was beautifully wrapped. It looked like this, with this pretty, she obviously stitched some trim. There's a piece of lace and then the zigzag trim. I can't think of the name of that. Anyway, it was over this. Oh, I think it was this way. And of course it was in this little envelope. And she wrote this darling note that says, Laurie, thanks much for your purchase, Susan. And these are the buttons right here, which I think would look better on the paper. They're check glass. And I will link her Etsy shop in the description box down below this video. If you recall, I had to dispense with the idea of using these beautiful glass buttons, but they're too thick for this project. I think you can see they're gorgeous and they will be used for something, but here is the difference. I think that'll show. I know it's probably blurry. My lighting in this room is just wretched. But anyway, these are 11 millimeter, and I've already checked it to see if it will fit, which it does. So all I have left to do, and if you're watching, Susan, thank you. I appreciate it so much. Okay, so this camisole has the requirements for 4 buttons, and I already did the buttonholes, which I've only cut this one open. The other 3 I need to cut open, and then we'll sew on the 4 buttons. And I told Candice I'm going to sew these on, and I'm going to give her the other 3. I'm not going to sew them like you would normally do on the inside of the garment somewhere, because even though she's going to be washing it by hand due to the fact that these are glass buttons, something could still happen. And I don't want the replacement buttons to be damaged. And she'll be washing it by hand, but something could happen. So she'll just have these in her little sewing kit, and she will be able to replace any that might break, which we're going to hope that won't happen. 1, 2, 3. Where did I cut the other one loose? I think it was, yeah, it was this guy. Okay, so I will probably just tape this thread. I don't want it to come unthreaded. So I believe I will pull it through to the back. Pop a piece of tape right there, and then trim this short. And then I will just give this to her. Okay, and if you recall, the way I do this, there's a million different ways to do buttonhole openings. And I have a punch, but I don't want to use it. I'm just going to use a pin through the top part from the front. I'm going to go down. Let's bring you down a little bit so you can maybe see. Down and then back up. Just like that. And then I take a newer sharp seam ripper and kind of wiggle it through until it comes through to the back of your buttonhole, and then very carefully just kind of wiggle it through the fabric. Being Batiste, this fabric is easy to cut with a seam ripper. The pin stops it from just going all the way through. And then if you need to, you can take a pair of sharp scissors or snips and just kind of snip up to where the bar tack across the top goes. And then I want to check to make sure that each button goes through and adjust accordingly. Now I don't want these buttonholes to be too loose. I don't want that to be an issue, so. Right. And I think I did mention, because I had to wait so long for these to arrive, these buttons. They were shipped to me from Burlington, Vermont, and I live all the way across the country in Washington State, so it took a minute to get these. So while I've been waiting, time has passed, so much has been going on. I think I mentioned that you could do these buttonholes by hand. There is a nice little instruction sheet that comes with the pattern that will show you how to do a buttonhole stitch. So the way that I mark my buttonholes for buttons is I will lay this side where the buttons go, I will lay it this side down, nice and flat, and then put this right where it's supposed to be when it's buttoned up, so that the top where the lace meets is perfect, and down here at the bottom is where the hem is supposed to meet up is perfect, and the casing should be perfect. And then if you want to, you can put your weights there to kind of hold everybody in place, or you can pin it. Oh my gosh, they're heavy. But the weights are great. Just for marking, I'll probably put 3 here and 3 here. Yeah, perfect. And then I'm going to take my Air Erase pen and go straight through that buttonhole. I should have marks, and of course I do. We'll do a quick fly in. Okay. There they all are. Okay. And now I will, like so, and I'm going to do it one more time. So down, under, and back out. Now my thread is strongly stitched to the fabric. Okay, so now I'm going to take my button, and I want my button to be in the middle of this line. So I will bring my thread to the middle, but I'm going to twist it underneath. And this will help give your button something to sit on, which is kind of nice. Okay, that's good. And then I'm going to just take a little stitch sideways, like I'm making a little tiny lowercase t right here. There's a Bama hair, for heaven's sakes. Bama hair. Okay. So for my button, I've got that T. All right, now I'm going to put my button on the needle, and I want the button holes on this button to go sideways like this, not this way. That is my preference. It doesn't have anything to do with the best way to stitch a button on, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to finish. I really like this pattern, and I know that I'll make it again. I think it would be really cute in even a heavier fabric with maybe a print or a design. I think you could add a little bit of boning for some structure, but all in all, it's easy to do. It's fun to do. The options are pretty much endless. You can make it as fancy or as plain as you would like to make it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And my next video is likely going to be at the new house. Once I get the studio set up at the new house, I really feel like, based on the lighting, it'll be a lot easier to film in that location. Anyway, here's a few pictures of Candice wearing her new camisole, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.